afternoon. My friendship with Bill Kraus goes back more than 50 years. He, Warren Knowles, Odie Fish, and Paul Hassett were 4 of the 5 political mentors I had as a young person. All 4 are now gone. The 5th was Ann Peckham, who's here today. Shortly before Bill's death, he sent Ann some notes summarizing his life in politics, and she was kind enough to send them on to me. In 52 short pages, Bill refreshed my memory about the 52 years that I've known and admired him, and caused me to reflect on how he and the others influenced my life. One of the typical Kraus lines in his memoirs was that show business does great memorial services. He went on to say, politicians do as well. The stories and deliveries are uniformly wonderful, nostalgic, funny, sad. I'm pretty confident that this delivery will fall short of wonderful, but it is heartfelt. Kraus always set the bar pretty high for all of us. Tony asked me to join Tom Loftus talking about Bill reaching across the aisle. That suggests that our comments should cover some things political, and that's a good place to start. First, on influencing my political life, the single most important lesson I learned from Warren, from Paul and Odie and Kraus and Ann, is that if you do the right thing, politics will sort themselves out. Rarely in political life are you associated with such principled people. As a college student getting into politics, it would have been easy to get caught up in the partisan causes of the day. But Kraus and the others believed that public service is a noble endeavor, not to push a specific dogma, but to do the right thing for people. It was a lesson I tried to live up to. Reaching across the aisle also suggests that we're supposed to talk about bipartisanship, Republicans and Democrats getting along. Interestingly, there are other aisles. The 60s were pretty easy for Kraus and for me. We were both working for Governor Knowles, passing me on the staff, Odie, Bill, and Ann running the campaigns. Then came the 70s and the classic standoff between the Dreyfus and Kasten people in the GOP. Kraus and Bob Williams were spearheading the Dreyfus campaign while I had moved to the Fox Valley to work for a paper company. My business associates included Hassett in the governor's office, then head of WMC, Dave Martin, then with Kimberly Clark, and other business elites throughout the state. We were the establishment that Bill and Bob were fighting and running against. I agreed to chair the Kasten campaign in the Fox Valley. Both Dave Martin and I were married to Ann's, and they informed us that you've picked the wrong horse. We're going to support the president or the chancellor from Stevens Point. And what I'm sure was a very condescending pat on the head. I wished her luck, my Aunt luck, secure in the knowledge that I knew the political game and overly confident in the outcome. To say that Bill and Bob ran an unconventional campaign would be the ultimate understatement. At one point, they asked Aunt Haney if she would feed and house the ragtag band that was arriving in Neenah the night before a campaign rally. Ann turned on the charm and convinced me that no harm could come from cooking burgers and brats for some hungry teenagers. So I said, okay. Of course, there were more than teenagers on tagging along with the bus. And when they arrived at our home, there was a gaggle of politicians and a handful of newspaper reporters. One of whom was Bill Shiver, who saw to it that there was a side story in the next morning's Milwaukee paper pointing out that the Kasten 6th District Chair was helping the Dreyfus case. Was I set up by the let the people decide that. But it's the kind of political gotcha that was funny and made politics fun. And that's what we came to expect from that campaign. Fast forward to the night of the primary. I invited Dave Martin to come over and watch the returns and was surprised to get a call from Warren Knowles, who happened to be in town. He was wondering if there was an election party for like-minded establishment types, so I invited him to join Dave in me, explaining that our wives were in Waukesha County desperately tilting at windmills at a late campaign event. But Warren Knowles knew how to count votes, and very early on as the returns came in, he said, "Our guy's going to lose." About an hour later, when the networks called the election for Dreyfus, the two Anns dashed in, whooping and hollering. They were a little taken aback, and those of you who knew Warren Knowles know that he was a fairly distinguished-looking man. Here he was sitting on our davenport, sort of long-faced. He pretended to wipe away a tear. All right. The sequel to the whole night was the next morning, when the very first call that Bill took in the office was from Paul Hassett. Paul said, "This is the establishment calling." And of course, Bill was gracious and welcoming. Another aisle reached across. Though in candor, and even after having worked in the Dreyfus administration, I never went to a Dreyfus social event where either Lee or Joyce didn't remind me that I was Johnny-come-lately to the campaign. Bill was a person who dedicated his life to politics in the best sense, and to making democracy better. More than once, when he sent me one of his treatises on campaign finance reform or reapportionment and asked me for a comment, I would find myself going back to the dictionary to see how to spell Sisyphus, the mythical Corinthian king who spent eternity rolling a rock up the hill and to have it roll back again. But he was a happy warrior, never giving up in despair, always treating his adversaries with respect, and always displaying his incredible mastery of the English language and his wit. Another line in his memoirs bemoans the fact that there are more enemies than adversaries in politics these days, in spite of his long-time efforts to change that by working on a higher plane. If time permitted, I would go on about his wonderful culinary habits and talents. You've heard some of that already. His hot shot chicken and Brussels sprout hash are showstoppers. For the time he volunteered to come to my home and start the charcoal so that it would be ready when we came home from a graduation ceremony. He started the grill on the back deck as requested, but left the patio doors open and charcoal smoke permeated the whole house, making outdoor eating the preferred option. A favorite story of mine that captures the charm and hilarity of Bill Kraus. He and Tony flew to Paris to go to a French cooking class in the country. As Bill told the story, they got their rental car, and while crossing a bridge over the River Seine, the car caught on fire. They got it safely off the bridge, and he called Avis to report the damage. They promptly sent over another car, and by way of explanation, Bill said, "Well, nobody told me about the emergency brake release." They drove the replacement car out into the country, where it promptly died. With some apprehension, Bill called Avis again and explained, "Well, nobody told me that it took diesel fuel." Avis sent them 2 train tickets back to Paris. Celebrate his life. I'll miss his stories, his good nature, his marvelous wit and sense of humor, and his steadfast character. Bill loved his best friend Tony and his family, and was so very proud of his grandchildren. Bill loved his friends and showed it in the twinkle in his eye, the funny quip, the perpetual smile on his face, and the genuine laugh. He ends his memoir notes with the observation that when old political timers and has-beens get together, partisanship disappears. Bill calls it the dominant arena effect. He wrote, "No one who hasn't been in the game will know the special feeling of camaraderie, that sense of belonging." And then he added the classic Kraus-type punchline, "Classmates and teammates scatter, politicians cluster." We all hope that he feels part of this cluster today. Rest in peace, old friend.
I first met Bill Kraus in 1978 when Lee Sherman Dreyfus, the Chancellor of Stevens Point University, was elected governor. A ragtag gang from Stevens Point, thought to be innocents, came with him and took over Madison. From the north, a horde of decent people descended. Visigoths of niceness. Bill became Madison and Wisconsin's first citizen. Always in the public square, engaged and engaging. Lee Dreyfus said Madison was 77 square miles surrounded by reality. Sort of a duchy protected by a moat of 4 lakes and devoted to progressive politics and living the good life. Little did Dreyfus know that Bill Kraus and Tony Sykes would become the Duke and Duchess of this isthmus. There are not any really good words in English to describe Bill. The French have a few, however. He was a boulevardier, a man about town, we would say. He was a keeper of a salon, defined as a gathering of people under the roof of an inspiring host. This is our Friday lunch group. A self-perpetuating gaggle of has-beens, drinking at noon and demanding separate checks. A salon in a saloon. Bill was the maitre d', the front of the house, the arranger of things, the intellectual, and the iconoclast. Even when, as Dreyfus quipped, there wasn't a class to be iconic about. All right, so politicians and reporters and bartenders and restaurateurs have a natural bond. And Jim mentioned some of that. Paul Hassett, a stalwart of the Friday group, was beloved by Democrats and Republicans when he was the head of the Wisconsin Manufacturers and Commerce, the WMC. I'm convinced because he was once a journalist. And as Bill would say, another ink-stained wretch. Who we loved. And Jim Haney, who followed Paul, was okay too. He had Norwegian roots. It's pretty easy to be bipartisan. In his book, Let the People Decide, Bill notes the night before Dreyfus was to announce he would not run for a second term, Bill was in the bar of the Fess Hotel, and I quote, consorting with the presumed enemy, a covey of young Democratic state legislators. I was there that night. It could have been any number of nights in the Fess Hotel with Bill. And the presumed enemy. In a democracy, there is no enemy, and he taught us that. One reason Bill devoted his time and energy to overturning gerrymandering was that it does not let the people decide. It was not, after a policy goal, just a fair shot for the voters. Bill was a conservative of a certain classic definition. To prefer facts to mystery, the tried to the untried, the limited to the unbounded, present laughter to utopian bliss. Present laughter to utopian bliss. says it all about Bill. Thank you.
Hello, thank you all for coming. My name is Dashiell, son of Marcia and Russell, making me the youngest of 4 grandchildren. It's pretty clear my grandpa, or Poppy, is known to us, had an impact on, look around, tons of people. I see fragments of him, sprinkled through a lot of people over here and the people behind me, so I think I'll talk about that. Michael, if you're ever talking to this guy, you'll just know he just leaks intelligence. You'll be having a conversation about, some crazy unknown technology, and you walk away back, all right, that dude knows what he's talking about. And I felt that a lot with my grandpa, constantly. Dana, we all know, has just a burning curiosity and is so unashamed to be herself. Something that I also found with Poppy. Emma is the ultimate educator in and out of the classroom. If she has anything important that she thinks is useful, you're definitely going to know it. I've been a student of Miss Potter for 25 years. Still learning today. Although my Poppy wasn't an educator by trade, he was in his heart, certainly. For me, I couldn't tell you the numerous things that he taught me, but if I had to choose one, I would say it'd be respect. I was always the youngest, always the baby of this family, but was never talked down upon. Was always treated with profound respect. He treated me like he treated everyone else, and for that I can't thank him enough.
I'm Emma Kraus Potter, daughter of Marcia and Russell, sister of Dashiell, and Bill's 3rd grandchild. I was very fortunate, along with Dashiell, to live and grow up 2 blocks away on Spade Street from Poppy. And for the majority of our childhood, we would take the bus home and get off on his stop. And we would play gin rummy and would eat Wonder Bread sandwiches, which our mom would never buy. He was always a constant source of love, support, and always made me feel important. Our summer trips to New York City throughout my teenage years really shaped who I am today. During those trips, Poppy gave me a thirst for knowledge, which he continued up until last Christmas. He would send us, the 4 of us, a book every year that he had read throughout the year and really felt like would add value to our lives. He asked questions that made you feel valuable. He really pushed you to the limit. He wanted to know why, and not many people did that. While walking miles and miles through the streets of New York, he showed my somewhat egocentric teenage self that there are millions of people in the world, and they all have a really unique, interesting story. He used to say we'd come out of the building in New York, and he used to say, travelers either turn in the right direction towards where they're going to go, or the wrong. And he would say, lovingly, he would say, some people, they just know where they're going. And I think 28 years of his guidance, I really know I'm going in the right direction.
Kraus. In reflecting and reminiscing on memories over the past few weeks with my mother and with my aunts, my mother Nancy Kraus, Bill's oldest daughter, she kept saying, it feels like we knew and loved 2 very different men. And in wondering what she meant by that, I asked my Aunt Marcia, who replied in her always humorous way, well, for starters, the man didn't know what, let alone where the kitchen was until he was practically in his 40s. Lucky for all of you, we know how that portion of his amazing legacy progressed. I look forward to many more evenings of hot shot chicken. Thank you, Tony, for the amazing recipe that you're sharing with all of us today. Although it will never quite be the same without him at the table. This made me realize that everyone in this room probably knew a different side of our Poppy Bill, as we affectionately referred to him throughout our lives. That's just the incredible, multifaceted man that he was. A father, grandfather, husband, or boyfriend. Mentor, partner, colleague, teacher, great friend, and true champion of everything from good literature, smart politics, and truly all things the people in his life were passionate about and would be open to engaging in good conversation about. As many of you in this room have heard the stories, my cousin Emma and I had the privilege of experiencing the theater and the arts connoisseur and spent our formative our summers on the streets of New York City. Learning about life and society's many complexities, appreciating the experience of learning how to navigate a big city and learning how to build relationships on foot and how important that was. Gaining a palate for more cultured cuisine beyond mac and cheese that I so fondly admired as a 12-year-old, all while enjoying the theater arts, jazz music, museums, and endless awe that New York had to offer. In addition to the lessons and rules to live by, I will always admire and aspire to uphold Poppy's desire to stay up to date and informed. He had a never-ending curiosity about everything from technology and trends and culture to our evolving society and all that impacted it, including our individual and collective ability to impact it. He never became stagnant or cynical in his older years like so many generations separated tend to do. In the past couple of years, our conversations progressed from whatever hobby or life update I had to share to revolving around topics like how he could reach the youngest generation of voters on social media and his hopes that they would use their platform and their voice online to share more than just things about themselves. And his newfound intrigue in emerging trends like CBD oil amidst the common stigma and non-acceptance from an older and more conservative generation. And that was Poppy. That was how he was, and that's what I loved about him. In the words of Lin-Manuel Miranda's Hamilton, even at the age of 92, he was much like his country, young, scrappy, and hungry. I've had the honor and privilege of hearing over the years, and especially this past weekend, all of the amazing sides of Bill Kraus that all of you knew, and all of the lessons and the rules that he to live by that he instilled. I welcome and look forward to hearing more today and in the years to come. I know I speak for all of us when I say, from the musical Wicked, one of the first Broadway shows we shared, and still today this favorite, because we knew him, we have been changed for good.
For those of you who don't already know, I'm Michael, the elder grandchild here. Allegedly, I'm also the one who once coined the eponym Poppy Bill. Although the tale of how and when I supposedly minted this enduring nom de plume has evidently been forgotten among the countless recollections of a much cuter and more innocent-looking version of me, known to this day as Michael Good Boy. That's okay though. I'm still more than happy to accept credit. I was told that we were supposed to be up here to represent our family, but I'll choose to spare the rest of them any embarrassment that might result from my words and just speak on behalf of myself and my anecdotal experiences of the knowledge and wisdom PB often tried to impart. Over the years, Poppy attempted to teach me at least a few lessons about life and the world around me, some of which I eventually came to understand and incorporate, and at least one or two that I'm still trying to comprehend and integrate. I remember walking a few of the rolling green golf courses of the central Midwest as an 8-year-old, excited about the fun and novel adventure of a 9-hole par 3 executive, cocky and overconfident of what I thought was a natural talent for the game. My cavalier approach soon led to the overwhelming frustration of suffering endless multiple bogeys and a desire to stop keeping score because I just couldn't find my way out of a sand trap and onto a green. It finally occurred to me that what I previously thought was simply an effort to pass down the tradition of this gentleman's pastime was really a subtle hint about the virtues of patience, discipline, and achieving progress through continuous correction. I remember being rebuked for saying, "I don't care,"
whenever asked where I wanted to go or what I wanted to eat. What I thought I was saying at the time is that I could be flexible and open-minded. But what I realized I could potentially be perceived as is apathetic and disinterested. What I ultimately understood is that I was being warned not to succumb to indifference, even in regard to the most mundane aspects of day-to-day living. I remember the brisk, chilly, and downright bitter freezing cold Thanksgivings and Christmases in Madison, the quaint but vibrant summers in Wapaka and Stevens Point. I remember the persistent, as well as the not-so-familiar faces and faint memories of gatherings from Spate Street to Park Avenue. And now, in revisiting some of these same scenes from the past, I know where I am when I find the figures that have always been there. But I also recall a small glimpse of long-lost moments in time when I last encountered a family friend or family member that I hadn't seen for longer than I could determine. And what I had assumed was that it was simply kind and proper to invite everyone you know whenever you have a party somewhere in Wisconsin. What I've only begun to realize is that part of what makes life meaningful is always making a point of bringing the people you love and surround yourself with together. And that it's who you are and your actions throughout which constantly ensure you will always be able to do so. I know I didn't have a chance to show him that I learned everything he wanted me to, but I hope at least he had a chance to see just how much he had to do with making me the person I eventually became to be. And that I think I can say on behalf of my family that each of us must have at least a handful of anecdotes which all tell a similar story about the man we are all here to celebrate. I just want to thank you for all joining us today to do just that.
Tony asked that this part of the service would be devoted to Bill's activism. And I'm not really sure how you define that because Bill lived an active life from beginning to end. But I guess it's the part after Dreyfus, the part after he retired from business. And by my calculation, when I met him in 1992, he was 66 and just embarking on a very active career which ended only in December. And I first met him when I was working for the Democratic Senate Majority Leader, and he was appointed to something called the Legislative Study Committee on Campaign Finance Reform. And what I knew of Bill Kraus at that point, having moved to Wisconsin in 1988, was that he had worked